So we're at a few minutes past 11, so I'm just going to go ahead and get started, even though some people may still jump on the call. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about stress. There's certainly an abundance of it going around in the world right now, and so that's going to be our focus. But before we get to that, I want to just give a few quick updates on college life and things in general. So two things that are, one big thing that happened this week, many of you may have seen it, is that CMS has approved the idea of starting school earlier in the fall. I think the date is August 17th. I know that's the date that they have proposed. The issue that they're now facing, of course, is navigating around the Republican National Convention, which was going to be part of the reason for starting late in the first place. So there's still some talk about, will they do some online classes even during that week, just to minimize traffic in and around the city, those kinds of things. So just be on the lookout for that. I'm sure schools will start sending out emails directly to families about what the plan is for the fall. Colleges are starting to talk about reopening and what their plans are going to look like in the fall. So for those of you, many of you are parents of juniors, that may mean we get some time in the fall for you to be on campuses to do some of the visits and things like that you didn't get to experience normally this spring. But obviously, everything is in a day-to-day situation, and partly it will depend probably where in the country you're trying to visit, because everybody, I think, is going to reopen in different phases and things like that. So just be on the lookout for that. I'm trying to maintain a list of up-to-date resources on my website the best I can. As you can imagine, things change so rapidly that sometimes there's maybe a lag, but I go to my website for just under the resources tab. There's information about testing. There's information about college campuses opening. There's summer programs that are gone virtual. So lots of things I'm just trying to house there to keep it all in one place as the times are crazy right now. And then eventually I will be able to turn that into a real resource guide where it's not just dependent upon COVID and things like that. The other thing that, is adding a little bit to my own stress is that it looks like my June essay workshop is going to have to move to August. I am awaiting the final word from the Cornwall Center at Myers Park Baptist Church, where I host it. They are not confident that they will be reopened in June, and then also just not confident that people will feel comfortable gathering at that point. So I'm looking at another August date. If you are registered for the June essay workshop, you will get an email directly from me about what the alternative plans for August would be. In some ways, August will make more sense. I know we have a lot of us are just trying to find things for our teenagers to be doing right now, and certainly I am willing to work with some of them who are anxious and ready to go ahead and start writing essays sooner rather than later. But the other part that the advantage we get with waiting is there's two of them actually, is the Common Application will refresh and be new for this junior class starting on August 1st. So that means we will have access to that application ready to go in August, whereas in June, we're just working on sort of a dummy account early on, and then we have to roll over the information down the road. The other thing is there's still a lot of talk about an added essay for the Common App that will relate to students' experiences during at-home learning and what that was like for them. So we want to know that, obviously, because if that's something that, even if it's optional, usually my advice is optional means it needs to be done. So even if it's optional, we want to know that it exists so that we can address that too if that's something that students are going to need to write about. So those are kind of my just quick updates for what's on the horizon right now. Obviously, continuing to give you all the best information I can as fast as I can. Real quick, next week's session on Coffee with Kim is going to focus on small liberal arts colleges, specifically the group Colleges That Change Lives. And if you're not familiar with that, they are a group of about 40 schools around the country that have been designated as top-notch liberal arts colleges, but that are not the hardest ones in the country to get into. And they are really well known for having a nurturing environment, small campuses where students are really engaged with learning and knowing their professors. It's kind of the idea you can go to a small place and really be a big fish in the pond at those. So that's what's on deck for next week. And then I'm continuing to update. That list is also, the topics list for Coffee with Kim is posted on my website as well. So I'll update that as topics are decided in the weeks to come and things like that. So those are my updates. Any questions or comments anybody wants to ask before we move into our discussion about stress this morning? All right. Well, again, chime in at any time and we'll have a little time at the end for wrap up too if you think of something. So stress, we all have it, we all experience it. The way we react to it, I think, is, for me, it happens to be different depending on the day of the week and what else is happening in my life usually. My ninth grader could attest to the fact that during at-home learning, there have been days when I'm feeling angry and I'm yelling more than I should probably. And then there are other days when I'm kind of like, that's okay, you missed class, I don't care. I mean, it kind of depends on where my mood happens to be. But what I know from not only my own parenting, but also just working with teenagers, that so often our reaction really can elicit different responses from them. And certainly how we react affects them. And in this college process in particular, it's really important that we think about our own reactions to not only their successes, but also to the stress that they feel and the stress that they may be causing us as parents as they go through this process. It is, we don't want them to feel like they are disappointing us. In a lot of cases, this process in particular, so much happens that is out of our control. And as parents, that is hard for us to deal with sometimes because we've tried all of their lives to protect them and to give them the best of everything. And sometimes we just can't manage all of that. Again, we hear bad news or sad decisions and we feel like, we want to take that hurt away from them. But again, the way we react can really impose false opinions or false ideas on them sometimes that, again, we're disappointed in them. We may be disappointed in the answer or in the situation, but it is not our disappointment in our own children most of the time. I understand they frustrate us and they do things that are going to cause us stress, but in this process, again, I don't even know how many of you all know this, but my tagline is to maximize the opportunities and minimize the stress. And my whole career has been about trying to do whatever I can to minimize the stress for students going through this process and for parents. And most of the time that's about providing information and being a resource the best I can. And that to me is really important because otherwise we would be in hyper overdrive all the way through this, really all the way through high school most of the time. Angela, you mentioned AP exams a minute ago. I also, many of you don't know this, my last most part-time job with Providence Day is still being the AP coordinator. So yesterday was a very stressful day as things didn't work. People had trouble uploading. There were a batch of issues throughout the day. And, I felt so badly for those students who have worked so hard for these AP exams. And so far there's about a 98% success rate. And so that's frustrating to watch, but I have to gauge how I'm reacting to them and trying to just help them through it as we go. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk with my special guest here, Angela Gala.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And she teaches meditation to teachers, to students, and to business executives in Charlotte. She works for two different organizations. One is Youth Meditation and the other is Charlotte Meditation. She's going to walk us through some tips and even do an activity with us on how we can minimize our stress, hopefully, and how that will help us as we work with our students. So Angela, take it away. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. And your conversation just brought up so many different things for me. I'm sure it did for everybody.
Well, you've got students on both ends of this spectrum right now with high school. So
yeah,
you're right in the thick of it.
right in the thick of it. I got one graduating and going off to college if he and I can come to agreement where he's going.
Right.
And yeah, and then the other two are right in the middle of online virtual learning. One's getting a ton of work and the other one's kind of half getting it. And, so trying to, as the parent, manage who's doing what, right?
Mm-hmm.
It causes us a lot of stress. And all of these things are stressful, but I look at life like a roller coaster. Ups and downs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And no one's life is going to be all uphill. It just never is, including our children. And the one thing you said about stress and how it impacts children is very profound. It's not just the messages they're getting for why we're stressed, but children do what they see. They don't do what we tell them or wish them to do. So the way we respond to stress is going to be the way they respond to stress. And when babies come into the world, all they have as form of communication is reading energy. They have their intuition, right? So when you're having a bad day, your baby's crying and you can't figure out why it's just all going to hell in a handbasket. Well, because you're all upset. Now the baby's upset, and kids
Absolutely.
still have that. They're really, really smart, and they sense your fear. And if your fear is that they're not going to be successful, then they know they should be afraid. But if we don't know that we're operating from fear, or that we're operating from anger, or when we don't know ourselves what's going on inside, we can't really determine what we're projecting to our kids and how we're helping them or how we're not helping them. Does that make sense? So the first and primary thing about this practice is that it's for you. This is not for your children. I just wanted to kind of give you some perspective that I've learned after 12 years of practice and how it's impacted my home life. And I'm the only one that practices. I finally do have a younger son that, oh God, if any of you knew him and he knew you knew this, he would kill me. He practices. But he's the only one in my family that ever has. And for years, no one did. But it changed our family dynamics. And so I wanted to kind of give you a little bit of that understanding that if you do this, you're not doing it for anybody but yourself, because you have to manage your stress. And so I'll tell you a little bit today. Kim, tell me how much time we have.
You are great. Keep going. You've got at least 20, 25 minutes.
Okay, good. All right. I will try not to keep anybody over. So I'll tell you a little bit about what meditation is and what meditation isn't. But I do want to stop and see if anybody has a question before I get started. And you can chat or unmute yourself.
Raise your hands, unmute, whatever. Yep.
Whatever helps. Okay, no questions. So, all right. Meditation is relaxation of the mind, body, and spirit. It's a connection to yourself. When you're connected here, you're peaceful. And when you're peaceful here, the whole world's peaceful. When you have conflict here, nothing's right out there. Meditation and sleep are sisters. If you don't sleep well and you meditate before you go to bed, you'll sleep better. If you didn't get a good night's sleep and you meditate when you wake up, you'll feel better. Is the one thing I have no science behind, but can only tell you from practice that it works. It's better than a cup of coffee, and I don't know why. I guess because when we're asleep, our mind goes on unchecked. That's why we have all these weird dreams. It's why we wake up in the middle of the night and we can't get back to sleep, and it's exhausting. So sleep is when your body rests and rejuvenates. Meditation is when your mind rests and rejuvenates. Because when you're sleeping, your mind is not resting. Does that make sense? Okay. Meditation brings clarity of mind. When you're connected to yourself, you know what's right for you and you know what's wrong for you. And you're not confused. And that's an easier space to be in, because it can be very confusing, especially when you have multiple kids, multiple personalities, so many different facets that go into the decision-making of being a parent on top of all your other responsibilities. What meditation is not is a religion. We do not teach meditation that's connected with any religion, nor does it conflict with any religion that I'm aware of. It's simply the meditation part of it relaxes your nervous system, and the mindfulness practices give you different perspective. So I'll take you through, if you're ready. Let me stop there and ask if anybody has questions at this point.
Okay.
No? Okay. I'll take you through a couple of things that we do. We're going to start with breathing. And so we'll do our breathing, and then we'll do some meditation, and then we'll have a little chat after. Okay?
Sounds great.
Awesome. Okay. Everyone sit up straight. We always start with the breath. The breath is your first line of defense. It's the one thing a human being can't live without for more than 4 minutes. You can live without love, water, shelter, food, anything, but you can't live without your breath. So we take deep breaths in through our nose and out through our mouth. always during meditation. And the only rule is if you will sit with your back up straight, take that little kink out of right between your shoulders. So we don't want your shoulders rigid, but we do want it straight because the air flows a little bit better. And I'll show you what it looks like first, and then we can do it together. So we breathe in through the nose, out through the mouth. So if everybody will do that with me, take a deep breath in, hold it, let it go. No breathing. Breathe in again. Hold it. Let it go. No breathing. Breathe in again. Hold it. Let it go. No breathing. Breathe in again. Hold it. Let it go. Breathe naturally and relax. Was that okay for everybody? I think at the bottom of your bar, you have like a little reaction button. So if you don't want to chat or say anything, yeah, you can react to that. If it was tough for somebody, let me know. If you have asthma, back off a little bit. Don't breathe as deeply as I do. But otherwise, you want to fill up till about 90% and then let out all the way. So your focus is on your breath, nothing else. So Kim, I don't want you to worry about what everybody else is doing or thinking or how they're taking it or receiving it. You worry about your breathing, and everybody else worry about their breathing. That's all we're focused on at this point. So this time we're going to close our eyes, and we're going to do everything just the same way, but we're going to do it with our eyes closed. And I'll walk you through and tell you when to open your eyes, okay? All right. Close your eyes and relax. Close your eyes and relax. Take a deep breath in. Hold it. Let it go. Breathe in again. Hold it. Let it go. Breathe in again. Hold it. Let it go. Again. Hold it. Let it go. Breathe naturally and relax. Breathe naturally and relax. Relax your shoulders. Relax your arms. Relax your hands. Just relax. Open your eyes and relax. How was that? Everybody feeling a little relaxed? Got some thumbs up? Awesome. Very good. Okay. All right. Now, are you guys up for trying a little meditation? Yeah, you good for that? I won't leave you sit too long. This time we're going to do a little meditation. The breathing is how we prepare the body, and then the meditation is what comes next. Okay, all ready? We're going to close our eyes again, and I'll tell you when to open them. So just sit comfortably. One of the things that's important I want to mention, I'm sorry, never do this in bed, because meditation is an active process. Now, we do have a sleeping meditation, and this is for people who really have a rough time getting to sleep, or people wake up in the middle of the night and they can't get to sleep. We've got 2 other methods for them, depending on how powerful that force is to deal with. But normally our meditations are done sitting up. So you should be sitting in a chair. If you're sitting on a sofa, or if you're sitting on your bed right now, that's fine. But make sure your back is straight, and you can sit either cross-legged, or you can sit in a chair with your feet on the floor, whatever's most comfortable for you. Oftentimes you will see people doing this. For us, there's no religious meaning in this. It's just that your body is made up of circuitry, like an electrical circuitry called your nervous system. And we're trying to ground that energy to ourselves. So that's why you'll see people do this. But you can sit with your hands clasped together in your lap, or your hands on your knees. Whatever feels most comfortable for you is totally fine. Okay, so sit comfortably and relax. Close your eyes and relax. Breathe naturally and relax. Take a deep breath in. Now hold it. Let it go. Breathe in again. Hold it. Let it go. Breathe in again. Hold it. Let it go. Again. Hold it. Let it go. Breathe naturally and relax. Breathe naturally and relax. Relax your shoulders. Relax your arms. Relax your hands. Relax your mind. Relax your body. Relax your mind. Relax your body. Relax. 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 Open your eyes and relax. Open your eyes and relax. Stretch your arms, stretch your legs, and relax. How was that? Are you a little more relaxed? Yeah. Okay, good. So, anybody have any questions at this point? You can unmute or chat.
Unknown caller.
Oh, sorry about that. So, I want to tell you that a couple things. There are 4 main weights. I will call them weights on our decision making. One is love. We all want to be loved. We love our children, love our family. So sometimes we make those decisions out of love, or at least that's the place we're coming from. Another one is greed. It's not always greed about money. Sometimes it's greed about affection or attention, or it could be anything, right? But that's just part of being human. These aren't bad or good. These are things to notice, because this is what we are. We're made up of everything. Another one is obligation, sometimes real, sometimes perceived, what we think we owe it to our children to do, or our husbands, or our wives, or family members, mothers, friends. And the other is fear. And fear and love are 2 of the biggest ones. But if we're not aware of under which one we're operating, we can't be totally aware. And our decisions are fraught with all sorts of emotions and feelings, and maybe not the ones we wish we would have made. So meditation is a connection to yourself. And our meditation course teaches you not only how to meditate, but there's also mindfulness practices. They don't take up extra time out of your week to do. They just are a different perspective, looking at things from a different way. The meditation, the most we'll ever ask of you is 10 minutes twice a day, or 15 minutes once a day. That's really all it takes. So it's not a huge time commitment on a daily basis, but what it's there for is to reduce your own stress, to make yourself feel better, to weather the roller coaster of life, whether it be yours or your children's, and have joy in the process. Which I read something somewhere that was very profound to me, that the way you handle stress will determine the quality of your life.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Makes a lot of sense. I couldn't have put it in those words myself, but I couldn't think of a better quote that really sums it up, because everyone has it and it always comes. It doesn't go away. Mm-hmm. It's just how we handle it and how we look at it. So it's been profound on me and on my family. And I had one child, I won't tell you which one, used to come into the house when he was like 8 or 9, and he was not happy until he took down the whole house. If he was angry, everyone was going to be angry. And then he was fine. And then everybody else in the house is left going, I'm so mad right now. Right? Until I could see what I was doing to contribute to that, it wasn't going to change. But I didn't know that till I saw it. And once I saw it, it just took seeing it. And then naturally, I responded differently. And then eventually he started to respond differently. And he's not that way anymore, which is lovely. Yeah. So it is not for them, but there are impacts. It is for us, right? So that whatever happens, we can handle it. And your children will do what you do.
That's such a great point. So I do have some questions in the chat for you now.
Yeah.
The first one was, when we're meditating, and I have experienced this myself, but when your thoughts go away from breathing,
yeah,
are there techniques that you should employ to keep you more focused, or
absolutely.
Is it okay? What do you
Absolutely.
do? Okay.
Nope. Right. Okay. So that's all a, what I want to say, that's all part of the practice and part of the lesson. So it's kind of a graduated, and it's not that I don't want to tell you right now, it's that it won't mean anything to you yet. So the practice is, we'll work on the breath first, then we start to meditate, and then we start to talk about, all right, what's happening when we're meditating. And then we start to give you these other things. And it's a little different for each person, what you need, in order to help you, because it's a practice for a reason. I don't want anybody to think that you can clear your mind, because you cannot. Your brain has been put in your body to think. That's its job. It's very much like your lungs, right? Your lungs are voluntary and involuntary both. So you can breathe on purpose, or it's just going to breathe. Well, you can think on purpose, or you're just going to think. And you're not really aware. We get about 50 to 70,000 thoughts a day, and not every one of them deserves our attention. Not everyone has merit either, because sometimes they just show up. We grew up without monitoring what we allow to be important. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And so this is kind of that process of figuring that out.
That's a great point. I was taught actually by a therapist who would do mindfulness with a group that I was going to a few years ago, and that she just taught us to take note of what we saw, or what the thought was. And in the course of therapy, that was part of it, is, just addressing, like, oh, I'm still thinking a lot about this issue we were just talking about, or now my mind is completely transitioned to something else. So it was a lot of just being aware. For me, again, that was my personal experience of, okay, this is still clearly on my mind, even though we've just spent the last 30 minutes trying to talk it out, that kind of thing.
Right. Well, and this is, awareness is the goal. And it is about, the meditation is what allows you to have kind of the experience of awareness versus just the intellectual understanding.
That's a great point. Another follow-up question was, when you were talking about responding differently to one of your children, how did you respond differently is the question.
So that's a really great story. Okay. And I will tell a really nasty story on myself, but that one's going to take just a little time. Is there a shorter question in there?
Just making sure we got the 4 weights again: love, greed, fear, and obligation. Are those
That's
the
right.
4? Okay, thank you. That's it.
And those are the main ones. There's obviously other little ones, but
sure.
So I'm going to tell a really bad story on myself. I usually save this for later, but my son was accidentally practicing a practice that we had just been taught. Okay, so he was like 8 or 9, and he was dyslexic, so he had to go to tutoring. In 2nd grade, we learned he couldn't read. He was memorizing the books, so he had to go tutoring 3 times a week, and on Saturday, and then had extra homework. And he would just, I can't believe I have to do this, and why I'm a kid, and blah. So we'd have this big old fight before he had to do it. And finally I said to him, you get 20 minutes of video game if I don't have to hear about what you have to do, and you just go do it.
Bribery.
He was in for that. So first day went great. Second day, he's doing it, but then he goes off and does something else. And then he comes back, and I really needed the computer. But what I didn't want was to take the computer from him and have the fight. I was trying to avoid the fight, but I needed it before I went to work. And I kept saying, I need you to finish this so I can do something on the computer. I got to go to work. And I never took the computer. He didn't finish. I get ready to walk out for work, and I looked at him. Y'all, this is so awful. I looked at him and I said, are you kidding me? I said, do you know what it's like to go to school without your homework? You know what that feels like? And he's still trying to get his video game, mind you. Mm-hmm. I said, I got to go to work without my homework because you couldn't get your homework done. Thanks so much. That boy didn't say a word. Probably his feelings were hurt, but mostly he was probably still trying to get that video time.
Right.
So I walked out the door. I didn't hit the car, and I started to cry. And I cried the whole way to my meeting because I realized that encapsulated everything that was going on with him. I gave over my emotional well-being to this child. That what he did held sway over how I felt. And that's too much for a kid. And so that awareness, I recognized that no matter what he did anymore, I had to find a way to not pretend to be calm, but to actually be calm and accept him for who he was and accept what he was going through with compassion without wanting him to be different. And that's how I responded differently. And it took a little bit of time because it got worse before it got better because he wasn't used to it. But every time it would happen, I would remind myself, I need to actually be calm. I need to actually feel good, not pretend because he'll know, and ride this out. And after that, he just stopped doing it.
Wow.
Because he didn't have control over my emotions anymore. He felt more secure. So his anxiety level went from here to here.
Yeah. It's a great example.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Believe me, we all as parents have those stories. You know we do. So it's just we all have those not so proud moments. So
yeah, but without this practice, I wouldn't have been able to see that. We would have kept going at it.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that ties in so much to what I was talking about earlier about even again specifically with the college process, but throughout high school, how we react to their successes, to their pitfalls, to their mistakes, to, you know, they're teenagers, they should make some mistakes. You know, I think the other thing that I didn't talk about in the intro, I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, is but colleges are seeing such a higher level of anxiety and stress in our students when they get there, that I think as parents, part of our obligation and training for them throughout high school should be, you know, trying to teach them that yes, a little bit of a failure is okay. I know that's tough to swallow because the high stakes games of your grades and your class rank and your scores on your exams and all of those things play a role in the outcomes. But it is, I think, our responsibility really as parents to try to figure out how we help them navigate that. And quite frankly, I think if we can help them have some of those failures and show them how they get past them, they've learned even more than the student who just, you know, has no obstacle in their way going through this process at all.
And that's really well said, because they're on a journey and it's never linear. And
Right.
sometimes the mistakes are what drives them to the best place, even though it doesn't look like it at the time.
That's a great point.
I want you all to know that it was my mother that brought me to this practice. I was in my 30s when she started practicing, and it hit me profoundly that just her being different changed me. I realized I didn't have to be self-critical about the mistakes I made as a mother, that I could laugh them off like she started doing. I can't tell you what a huge relief that was. So even as a 30-year-old daughter, her practice impacted me so much that all of a sudden I just wanted to tell her everything, because she never took it as her failure or her success.
Yeah.
And she was able to help me put it in perspective. Yeah. So again, it's not for them, but it does have impact on the other side.
That's a great point. Anybody have any follow-up questions or comments before we wrap up today? I think that, again, maybe this is not what you all expected, but thank you for hanging in with us. I think it's important. I think, you know, whether this particular way of reducing stress and changing life at home is what you choose or not, it's still really valuable. I mean, find other ways if this one isn't it. If you're a runner or exerciser or all of those things, and you just do something different to take out the stress, that's important too. I think it's important just to kind of keep your eye on what's happening with the kids too. And, you know, we all, again, interact so differently with them depending on our own, what's going on and what pressures we're feeling at the time. And so being mindful of that, I think, is really helpful. To those of you today, okay, Terry, we'll come back to that. We'll have one participant who says she'd be happy to have Angela keep talking and explaining more things. So, well, that ties in really well to what I'm about to say, is that Angela and I have worked out a deal for you all. And if you are interested in having an 8-week meditation practice, learning this art, she has agreed to offer this to you all for a very deep discount at $100 for the 8 weeks. We will meet once a week. Our plan right now is Thursday mornings at 8 a.m. When I send out the invitation for you to register, if there's a better time for you, you're welcome to put that in there, and we will do our best to accommodate. But we think it's important. We feel like we see the value. We see that, it's those of you who have stuck around again today, you have learned something already. And if you're interested in that, it's again of steel. I think Angela, you said you charge, it's like $450 in studio. So doing it on a Zoom call.
Yeah.
So would be, the way we would do it. We will limit the size of the group to 10 or 12, just because we feel like, in Angela's experience, is that it's easier, better interaction if we don't make it such a huge group. But again, I will be following up with you all with that invitation as the follow-up to today's call. But since we do have a little bit more time and there's interest, Angela, is there anything else you could share with us today? And then the follow-up question also is, what about a class for students? So we can talk about that. We'll talk about that and get back to that one, Terry, for you too. But anything else that you could, share with us today that helps us understand this art of mindfulness and meditation?
Yeah. So one of the things about meditation and mindfulness is that they have to go together. Mindfulness on its own is good, but it becomes this intellectual process. Without the meditation piece, I think I mentioned this earlier, you don't get the experience of awareness. I don't know if any of you guys have ever had, I remember I went to the McCall Center for Visual Art. They do this kind of executive training for people who've never been around artists, right, and their processes. And I remember having this experience and trying to create something that I didn't know how. They ask you this general question and then they say, yeah, go ahead. And I had this epiphany about myself and knew how to express that. And it wasn't something I had ever uncovered before, but it was buried deep, but something that sits in the back of your head like all the time, and you know it. You just don't know that you know it, but you feel it. And I had already gone through the meditation practice. So I think that opened a lot of doors, but it just came pouring out. No one could have told me that. And nobody could have told me what was going on between me and my child. I would have railed against it. I would have said, it's not my fault that he's this way. Because he came into the world and at 9 months, he was having temper tantrums. So there's some DNA involved in that, right? But I wasn't helping him because what he was doing was triggering me. And I couldn't see that trigger. I had to see it for myself. And so when we say it's a practice of self-discovery, that's kind of what I mean. It's the mindfulness practices coupled with the meditation that makes it possible for you to discover it, because no one else can tell you it. Does that make sense? And what do we want for our kids so much? We want them to discover who they are. Because once you've discovered who you are and what you're here to do, that's so much more of a settled place to be. When you know yourself, you're not looking around you anymore, comparing yourself to everyone else. You know who you are and why you're here and what you want. And we want that for them. We have to have it for ourselves. You can't give anybody else anything you don't have. If you don't have care, compassion, and respect for yourself, you can't give it to your kids or to anybody else you love. One of the things we teach in schools, and particularly with the teachers, is in our Title I schools, very few of those children know what an adult who has boundaries and self-awareness looks like, because their poor parents are struggling. And so not only are they stressed about all the things that we're stressed about, they're stressed about making it through everyday life, right? And a lot of them have been raised with a bit of brutality. And so having compassion for yourself is the last thing they would think to have. And if a kid grows up without that, they don't know they should have it. They don't even know what that looks like. So how those teachers show up in the room makes a huge difference. And as a meditation teacher, when we go in, we can't show up the way teachers do, because teachers show up with expectations. parents show up with expectations. And that's okay. We do have some expectations for our kids, right? And that these are bars that we set, right? But as a teacher of meditation, we have to draw them to it. And we have to go in knowing that it's not our right for them to get it or want it, but it's our privilege to share it. And that's different. As our kids get older and they start pulling away from us as adults, it will be something really important if we want to keep communication lines open to understand their success or them doing it our way is not our right. It's our privilege to be on the journey with them at that point. But we have to set those boundaries without emotions. If that means, guess what, at 25, you're off the payroll. And you figure out how to get your insurance, you figure out how to pay for your car, you figure out how to get a job. Right. We have to be able to come to that with, here's how it's going to be, here are the rules, but with love, right? And without this total expectation of them, this, man, I hear you, I remember what it's like being that age. If I can give you some advice, this is what I went through. That's how we maintain friendship with our children as they get older, because at some point they need us to be their guide, but their friendly guide, not their parent who keeps beating into them what they want, right? I mean, what we need them to know. When they're little, we have to give them, no, you're going to do it this way, and you're going to do it this way, because we have to keep them safe. We have to teach them the way to be in the world, right? No, it's not okay for you to run up and slap somebody because you felt like it. As they get older, when we have self-awareness and we can catch where we're coming from, we can open up to be their friends and their guides. Does that make sense? And then they actually want our guidance. But when we're speaking to them as if you should and you should and you should have, they're going to push back. And it's kind of the natural order of things. They have to fly off and find their journey. And their biggest mistakes will be some of their biggest teachers and lead them on the best journeys. We just can't always see it, and it probably makes us a lot more nervous than it makes them.
Absolutely. Great advice.
Anything else?
Yeah, comments or questions for Angela? All right.
I will give you one little example if I have one more time.
Sure, yeah.
One of my sons was telling me, I'm like, why did you stop seeing these people? You don't go over their house anymore. You don't do, he goes, well, and it had been, 6 months or so since. He goes, sometimes they had some drugs. I'm like, and so every part of my being was like, what? I can't believe you did. What did you say? Oh my God. But I didn't. I caught that. I caught that was getting ready to come out. And I'm like, oh, okay. So how'd that go? What'd that look like?
Mm-hmm.
He was calm, so he could tell me. I didn't admonish him. I did ask him if he tried it. He said, no, I don't know. He maybe did, maybe didn't. But he felt like he could talk to me.
Yep.
And I didn't beat him up for it.
Yep.
And he ended up leaving that situation on his own, which was good. It was a tough place to be.
Right. That's a great example. And and these are the lessons that will sustain them as they go off on their own too, that they can navigate those kinds of situations or feel comfortable coming back to us as parents to say, hey, this is what happened today off in college. Because you don't get a lot from them, and you don't get a lot from the college when they're there. So it's, having the lines of communication really open prior to that is really, really helpful for sure. So, well, thanks again, Angela. We'll be following up. I will follow up with everybody that was here in the group today, and we'll talk. Angela and I, maybe you and I can talk a little bit about a possible class for students and figure out if that's even feasible. And then we'll definitely, I'll send the information for the parents in the group I think we're all moms. I think it's safe to say that based on the list of who I see is here, at least today. But, that doesn't mean dads can't join us. If there's a dad who would like to be part of it, they're absolutely welcome. But I'll follow up, and then we'll get going on that. We'd like to start next week with the moms group if possible, and then we'll put together some information about offering something for students. So thank you, Angela. This was wonderful. I feel more relaxed, ready to go tackle the rest of the day myself already. So, all right. Thank you all. And hopefully I'll see everybody next week. Again, talking about liberal arts colleges, even if you think that that is not at all what your student is going to pursue, there's still going to be some great information from our speakers on that topic, 3 speakers who have worked in various college admissions offices. So join us for that as well. And hopefully I'll keep seeing you all here on Tuesdays. All right. Thanks. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.